Welcome to Creative Power, a podcast designed to help you claim the full spectrum of your creative potential. I'm Camilla Fellis-Arnold, and I'm passionate about discussing how we change the face of both the creative industries and how we interact with creativity itself, so that it nourishes our soul and helps us express ourselves with alignment, flow, and authenticity. Let's get started. Welcome to Creative Power. We are back with Emily Tuck this week to talk to us about the Festival of Lammas, also known as Lunasar, and how it impacts and relates to creativity, because we've been doing this series throughout the year and we've come to another festival on the pagan wheel. And it's interesting because it's actually the festival is celebrated on the 1st of August, but we're not recording it on the 1st of August. We're actually recording it on the 8th. And there is a reason for that. The reason being that today is what is called the Lionsgate Portal. And we decided that it's a good idea to talk about both of these together because of the energies that Lammas brings in, and combining that with Lionsgate. We've got this really highly energetic portal for harvesting and manifesting. So we wanted to talk about them together. And I'm going to hand you over to Emily Tuck, and she's going to explain a bit more about it much more eloquently than I can. So Emily, tell us.
What they both have in common, which is what's important, is the ability to manifest. So Lammas is the beginning of the harvest festivals, and I say that in the plural because when I was finding out a little more about them and I was learning about them, essentially there are now 3 within a short period, so that different crops effectively are harvested at different points over the next few months. So they begin now and they roll until the 31st of October, which is Samhain. So I will be back before the end of that for the next festival, which is about 6 weeks' time, which is the middle harvesting. So what would effectively have happened during the harvesting on the farms, and still happens, I suppose, in the harvesting on the farms, is that certain crops come now, certain crops are in the next 6 weeks, and certain crops happen at the end of October. So that when you go into the metal element and you begin with what needs to live and what needs to die as you go into the descent, which we haven't covered yet in this series, there are no crops available. You begin that whole. So what you need to be able to do is harvest the different crops at a different time.
Rolling harvest.
So this is the beginning of that process. It begins on the 1st of August. It's why, I suspect, once upon an ancient moon ago, that's why the school holidays are where they are. So in our modern day, we look at the fact that it's August or September. Because we're based in the UK now. In England, the schools go back in the first week in September. But in Scotland, they finish in the middle of come towards the end of June. They have July as their summer holiday, and they go back in the middle of August. So what it's allowed for is within those 2 countries, people are all available at this time of year. If you like, if the children or the extra, who needs an extra pair of hands on the farm to do the harvest?
All hands on deck. All
hands to the pump, exactly. So what happens is that the school holidays are now there because they've always been there, but why were they there originally? So everyone was available to bring in the harvest.
And I feel like we've talked about that in terms of, because obviously we've done from In Bulk onwards, we've been having these conversations. We've talked a lot about planting those seeds and preparing yourself, bringing these ideas forward and really shaping them. And now is the time. It's not that on the 1st of August, you bring all the things in and harvest all the ideas creatively. It's the start of that process of seeing the results, seeing the tangible results and rewards from what we've been metaphorically planting as creatives, now we're starting to see them come to fruition and come to something that we can enjoy.
So you can get a first harvest.
Yes.
Time of year. However, it's also okay, and I know that on a personal note, we found this a very interesting exercise at this time of the year last year, because there was an element of where we had created things during the fire element, and we wanted them to harvest. But we also wanted them to harvest now, like immediately, if not sooner. And we'll have more of it tomorrow. So there was the human in us was impatient for what's the 1st of August, so we should have stuff.
Definitely. I remember that.
And yet, it did harvest, but it began a process. And so it harvested by the October, but it gently came in during this period. So what it's worth noting is there will be things that you set in motion right the way through in bulk, right the way around, possibly even from the winter solstice where you are right in the depths of that hibernation. And then in bulk you get to decide which ones are, how you're going to go forward. And what you might have done is you might be harvesting something that you put in motion in bulk. But it's also okay if you're harvesting something that you put in previous in bulk.
Yes.
Depending on where you put things in and how they germinate and how long they take to, get sort of organised. And I think it's worth noting for the creative listeners, sometimes your ideas leapfrog themselves.
Absolutely.
I experience this very much because I'm an archetype, I have the alchemist. I go and I find a shiny thing. Oh, there's some gold in here. And I play with the fact that it's got some gold. And I do something with it. And it might, for example, be a short course that I've created. Or it could be that you've done a particular set of sketches, or you've written a couple of poems. They're not necessarily completed compendiums of something. However, what you don't realise at the time is that that's a jigsaw piece of a much bigger jigsaw. So you think you've made a whole and complete piece, and then you carry on doing the thing, and you realise that actually this is attached to this. Or if I add this on, and when we're working with people and we're coaching, it might look like you've added something to the bundle, or because you've got a new awareness, there's a new module. However that shows up, there's additional bits you want to put into the chapters. There's a second book, whatever, and that's absolutely fine. So it's worth bearing in mind if you're sitting there and you're feeling like, well, where's my harvest?
I totally understand this. I've had it so many times myself. And there's this frustration that you get when you've got this project and you think, oh yeah, this is it. I've, got it nailed. It's a course, it's a piece of artwork. I know what I'm doing. And yet it doesn't feel complete, or you just can't quite get that motivation to get it over the line. I mean, even this week, I have finally finished a course that was set in motion 2 years ago. And it's finally finished, available. People can use it and actually do something with it now, but it took all that time. And it's that realization that sometimes, while it looks like it's the finished article to you, it is part of a moving bigger picture that we just can't see, and that's okay. Like, we're really hard on ourselves as creatives, really, really hard on ourselves. And it's just saying to yourself, you know what, if you're not feeling it, I profess this a lot and I try and practice what I preach as much as possible, but it's okay to follow your feelings. If you're not feeling it today, don't push yourself. Creativity takes so much out of us, and it's so much more of a process. It's not just an intellectual thing that we do in our heads. We live it, we breathe it. It's so much more. So it's okay to not have all the answers or not feel like you've made it yet.
And I had a really interesting experience with creative ideas. I think we've spoken about it in previous episodes, and if not, I'm sure you've mentioned it in other episodes. That concept that Liz Gilbert talks about in Big Magic, about the idea that the creative idea has its own energy and has its own personality in it.
Yes.
creativeness about it. It's its own agenda, basically.
It's an entity all in itself.
Thank you, that's what I was after. It's an entity all in itself, like a whole thing. And you and it have made a contract. I remember this time last year where we were sitting and we're going, are we frustrated that this has or hasn't harvested, or what has harvested compared to what we've got in the tank? And I can't speak for all your listeners, but I'm pretty sure quite a few of them, for every idea they put out in the world, they have another 25.
Oh yes, it's part and parcel of being a creative, right? They're always evolving, because this is the thing. And maybe that's something that we forget as creatives, that we take pieces of things that we find and kind of collage them together into something new. We take little ideas that we're seeing, people watching, we hear a word that we like, and it all gets mashed up together into something new that we create. So by extension, it makes sense for us to realize, although we don't, that the things that we come up with can be part of the bigger picture as well, that is always evolving and growing, that as creators, we never quite get to the end of what we're creating. So there's always something more, something new we can get out of it.
So when that's happening, this is a really good opportunity to look at it two ways. And I wasn't going to say this when I started, but actually it seems quite natural now. There's a couple of different ways to look at it. This is an opportunity to look at what have you done in the last 9 months, 8 months, 9 months, that you've been harvesting since February. So that's where we've started, where you've been listening to this series over the course of the year. You might be on the things that were in the incubation stage when I started talking about in bulk. And then we talked about how you bring it into life and all the rest of it. It may be those projects. So they have a turning circle of about a year, 9 months, something like that. Equally, what things in your creative endeavours, and this is where I was saying I had an interesting experience, because I was beginning to feel like some of those things, like, have they harvested? I've got more ideas than I know what to do with, but in a way, have I got any of them on the ground that are usable for people to actually either purchase or become part of, or join a course, or read the book, or buy the painting, or whatever it is? Anything tangible to show for my time. And what was fascinating was I went in, and I do a lot of meditation as part of my reflective practice to kind of allow myself to, okay, where am I going with this? And I went in and I asked one day, and I was like, what's going on with this? And what happened was, it was like the creative ideas that I had made contracts with to create something. Okay, you want me to create a thing, I'm going to create a thing. You've asked me to make this, handing myself over, I will create this thing for you. I had felt, in the frustration of the beginning of that harvest period, had I harvested anything, or was I wasting my time? But what was fascinating was that it was almost like the energy of the creative idea came and met me. And basically said, I don't feel like you've abandoned me. So when Liz Gilbert talks about the idea of that creative endeavour, now if it's left to sit and just sort of ruminate in the corner and not come to anything, then it might bugger off and find somebody else to make it happen instead. Which is why sometimes you see people's creative projects come to them, oh, that was my idea like a year ago, or I've got something similar. Now, some of that is because I think the universe wants us to create certain things, and it wants a certain evolution. So you do see other people doing a similar thing. Like at the moment, we are in a massive change around relationship protocol, relationships and the way they function, around the rise of the divine feminine, and also its balanced and energetic counterpart, not the reverse patriarchy. And so, because that's a conversation that lots of people are having, it's not that our contribution to that general trend is not required. It's not, the canvas would be the same if our brushstroke was missing. However, there are times when we've abandoned a creative idea, and it looks like it lives in Sassy's house with Mrs. Havisham, and it's sort of died and lanky, and the rats are eating the cake, and it's we've left it alone. And in actual fact, it has gone off and found a new person who will put it into the world. So it's worth taking some time at this point of the year, I think, as a creative. What have I allowed to harvest? What is like on a short return? What maybe I thought was ready to harvest, but isn't. Actually, it's got longer to germinate and to ruminate and to... And what has leapfrogged itself? So you made a thing, and it was just maybe a short thing, a course, a couple of poems, maybe a couple of paintings, something of that nature. And now you realise that this is actually only one puzzle piece in a 5,000 piece jigsaw. So you haven't abandoned the idea. The idea has grown and evolved all by itself, and all you need to do is keep up. And I think it's important to remember that sometimes that can happen, and it doesn't mean that the original idea has bombed or failed. It has chosen to turn up fully formed, but another 3-4 months down the line, or another year. And you've created a piece of it. And there's another piece, and another piece, and another piece. So it's about being gentle with yourself that actually this is not going nowhere.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point, what you say there about contracts with creative ideas, because you kind of never know whether it's going to stay, whether it's going to go. I've had projects, like I'm working on some multi-author books right now. Those projects have sat with me and waited for me for a full year. But then, like in Big Magic, Liz Gilbert, she talks about an idea for a book that she had, and someone else took the book on, and the similarities between these books was insane when they, compared notes when they found out a few years later. But the idea had waited for her long enough. I think there's this, creatives can have this kind of urgency and pressure that they put on themselves to get these things out now. But it's really important for us as creatives to remember that part of being a creative, one thing that we really, really need is time to think, reflect, incubate. We've been talking about it, me and you, Emily, all year, about that idea that these things need that time to grow and evolve. You don't just plant the seed today and then expect tomorrow that you're going to have the tree and the fruit and all the things. It's about giving yourself that grace to say, I'm in a different stage, I'm in a different phase, I need different things, I'm interested in different things, things are moving for me. The ideas won't disappear on the first day that you take a day off. Like, they do give you some time. It's okay to just give it some space. Like me, for example, with this podcast, I can feel it's evolving. I know it's moving. I don't know what it's moving and growing into, but I haven't left it. We haven't broken our creative contract. It's still here. It's still waiting for me. I'm still waiting for it. We're feeling into each other, and that's okay. There's no problem with that. But creators can be really, really hard on themselves. And I think this is my message to anyone who's listening, who's ever felt like that. Like, please just be kind to yourself. It's okay. You are doing amazing. Creativity is a really difficult and an ever-evolving beast that we walk with. It's fun, we love it, but also understanding it is really, really hard. So it's okay to not have all the answers today.
So it's an opportunity to see where you are with the different projects. What is ready to harvest now? What isn't ready to harvest? And it's also an opportunity for a bit of discipline if it feels right. What ideas that, quite frankly, never got over the line because I just couldn't be bothered with the last half a mile. Is there a way that I can take that and push it over the line?
There's a fine balance between just realizing, actually, I need some discipline and I just need to sit down and just get this done. And sometimes it's okay to say, you know what, this project really isn't aligned anymore. It's okay for me to let it go. But creatives, we do sometimes struggle to find that balance. And this is why I think that time piece that you're talking about, it takes a long time. It can take months, years for these things to actually make sense, is a really important lesson for us. Because, in the coaching space, as you've been talking about, 18 months, etc., it's reminded me of Melanie Ann Layer and how she talks about pineapples, and that they take 18 months to grow one pineapple. on the tree. And when you've taken that pineapple, you'll get another pineapple from that same tree, but it'll take another year. And then that whole plant is done and you've got to uproot it, plant a new one. But 18 months for one pineapple. And that's okay, because these things can be worth it.
And I think it's worth noting because, as you quoted Melanie later, let's do her credit. She has a lovely monologue about these pineapples. One of the phrases she uses in it is, "Those seeds we planted however long ago." You know, Mother Nature, God, the universe, they have heard us. But those seeds we planted however long ago. So it's permission to kind of let yourself, like, what's ready to harvest now? What can come out into the world now? And what might need another root round? What also might be ready, like, it feels like it's done. This section is done. But I also know that one day that's going to be a puzzle piece inside a bigger jigsaw. But right now, it's ready. And allow that bit out into the world. You don't need to hang on to it until the whole thing is done. If the universe wants that, it will make it very clear. So there's this: what are you putting in right now, and what is being manifested onto the earth? So the earth element gives us the aspect of, when we talked about be, do, have. So this is the having. What's going on around our having, our manifesting, our ability to put it on the earth. So one of the things to bear in mind is that the part of the body that is fortified or strengthened by this earth element in this phase of the year is our muscles. It's in our physical body. So whether or not you're someone who is an exerciser or not, if that's maybe, I suddenly feel the need to go out and walk. It may be that you're trying to use your muscles because your muscles want to move, because they're trying to be supported. They're trying to support you in the manifesting process. And this is just an aside, but I have had it when I've been dealing with people who maybe suffer from kind of constipation. Sometimes they say that the reason for that is that when you're not grounding in life, you don't ground things, you're all about the new. Because sometimes this new creative idea, you can spend too long in wood, which we spoke about when we did Ostara. In the Ostara episode, and how it's all about the new creative idea. So we're so busy with the new creative idea that we forget to actually finish and ground the previous one. And that was something I had interesting relationship with a year ago. Because I had to be practically nailed to the damn desk to make myself harvest the thing. Because I was too excited by the new thing. But what happened was my earth element was actually in deficit. I had ignored it as the poor cousin of the set, as it were. Because what it's trying to teach you is the ability to ground and stabilize. And what they say is, when you're refusing to take that lesson and use it, the body will compensate around you. So if you cannot ground, it won't let you let go of stuff. It won't let you put it on the earth because you're not willing to manifest it. You're not willing to finish the project. The body compensates around you and says, okay, well, the only way we can do that then is to keep holding on. And so the constipation is actually an attempt to try and ground you. Because when you finish with the project and it's harvested and it's gone, your body can let go. I've seen that. I've seen it in myself, I've seen it in clients, I've seen it in yourself. The second we've done the thing, half an hour later I need the loo. There's a process where the body goes, oh, we're done with that, we can let go of whatever. Now that we've harvested that thing, we can let go of everything else as waste. Sometimes that slow bowels or constipation can show up because we haven't manifested, we haven't harvested, we haven't allowed it to ground.
I think that comes back to the point that we were starting to make at the beginning of the episode where we were talking about the Lionsgate Portal. We've got this supercharged manifestation energy going on right now, which if you have got some things that have slowed themselves down or become a bit stagnant, you can use this to propel yourself forward and make some things happen and land on the ground.
Yeah, and that's where going out and walking and wanting to move your muscles, because they fortify those parts of the body, because we're on the ground.
Yes.
You're somebody who walks their dog, and so you have your feet on the ground every day. And the number of times, and I'm sure there are plenty of listeners who have a similar experience in different ways, the number of times you're like, oh, I'll speak to you later, and then you ring me 2.5 minutes into your walk. Because as you move your body and as you put your feet on the ground, it's almost like the ideas can take root. And a whole bunch of new ideas, or at least the next stage of, or whatever, arrive in the walking.
Yeah, that's me. It happens so much that, particularly if I've been churning on an idea, I've been really stuck. I can't find an answer, or I know something's there, but I just can't quite access it. A lot of the time, going for the walk, suddenly the answer just arrives fully formed, and I can't help myself. I've just got to tell someone about it because it's just flowing through me. Just getting out into that air, feeling the ground, being in the trees, all of those things just create that movement that I needed, that space that I needed for it to come in.
And often what they say, for going back to the slow vowels coordinate, is what they say is walk. If you walk on a regular basis, because you're grounding, because you're earthing, because you're putting things into the world, the system starts to do what it's designed to do and let go of what it doesn't need anymore. So it can be a really interesting exercise to use this time for that. So the other thing to look at is when it's about having and manifesting and putting on the earth. You've got two coordinates here. One I want to talk about is subconscious belief patterns, and the other I want to talk about a little bit is the portal. So the portal is not specifically my expertise. However, it's about realizing that this is a really, really important manifestation portal. And however you feel drawn to work with it, whichever person's meditations you feel drawn to use, what happens within the portal is this idea that you are now planting seeds in the harvest that will come about again between now and the next year, or between now and the next month. So between now and Imbolc, so last year we did this on the 8th of the 8th. And we talked about the idea that those things would manifest themselves by the following February. Now, some of them have, and some of them have taken the whole year to manifest. In one case, something that I put into the portal and decided that was my intention for the year, only harvested at the end of June. It took a whole 11 months to come back round. However, I put it in with all my heart and soul, and so what you're doing is you're imagining this a bit like a portal or a wormhole. And what you're doing is you're keeping your thoughts really mindful. Now, you could do it for the entire duration of the earth element and the whole point of this harvesting process. But what are we putting in? What are we asking to manifest either in the next 12 weeks? What are we asking to manifest in the next 12 months because of the portal? And so you're putting in a new set of seeds as well that are harvested in the harvest half in the spring. So it's a constant, as you described it before we started recording, a constant rolling harvest. So that's what the portal's about, is what is the manifestation and intention. So just like we talked about in Imbolc, who do you choose to be in this moment? Using the ability to manifest in a short return cycle, but also put in for a long-term return cycle. Who do you want to be? Who do you choose to be, and what do you choose to have in the world? What do you choose to create? What feels like this is what the world's evolution needs, and this is the type of thing I want to create? Because as you set that intention and as you put it into the Lionsgate Portal, what you end up with is that the universe hears that, and it goes, well, okay, it's been put in during a very important gateway for manifestation. And so be very mindful of, for example, are your thoughts, and I'm not saying you should be eternally optimistic because that's realistic.
It's about allowing yourself to believe in the possibilities and what do you truly want. I mean, we've spent a lot of time over this year talking about letting go of those limiting beliefs and all of those things that are in your way. And now is the opportunity to say, this is what I'm choosing to believe in is possible, that I want for myself, I want to create for the world. This is what I'm looking for. It's not about toxic positivity, and that's unrealistic. This is a day where you can sit there and say, what do I really want to create? All things are possible. what do I really want? Give yourself permission to dream and have fun with it, because you know what, the universe is listening. There's so much energy, so much intention around today that it cannot possibly miss what you're thinking. So make it good.
So right now, in that first week of the harvest process, you're mindful of what you want to have. Now, that doesn't have to be stuff. It could be the relationship that you want, or it could be that you're able to give back to society. It doesn't have to be stuff.
No, it doesn't have to be, you know, a brand new house or a big car. It doesn't have to be tangible things. No, there is absolutely no reason why it doesn't. You can be materialistic about it, totally, but it doesn't have to be entirely that. You know, you could put in the intentions of creating a new exhibition or a piece of work that you're really desperate, or a medium that you're really desperate to try, something that you'd like to master, something you'd like to explore and experiment with, a theme or a topic. It can be whatever you want that you put into this portal. And the energy it peaks today, or peaks on the 8th, and it carries on until about the 12th. So you've still got time, if you're listening to this, to put out those intentions.
And I'm just reading something that gives it in kind of 25 words or less. Every year on the 8th day of the 8th month, so the 8th of August of each year, there is a cosmic alignment called the Lion's Gateway. The Lion's Gate is the time of increased cosmic energy flowing between the physical and the spiritual realm. The Lionsgate Portal is activated when the Sun, Sirius, and the Earth are at a specific point in the sky. They move together. It is in this moment, that you will realise what you truly want and what goals you need to set for the coming year. So this is why we deliberately didn't rush to do it on the 1st. Because if we had been talking about it on the 1st, that energy is kind of working, but it's not peaked. It's not as active as it could be. We deliberately left the recording for a few days because we wanted to speak with the potency of that, and it wouldn't have been solid.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been quite a fully formed idea or episode. It's now got that energy. We're living it, we can feel it, so we can talk about it in a different way than we would have if it was just an idea, a concept we were talking about last week. So I think it's made for a richer episode. And you know, people who in future, because obviously this is a year-long series that we're doing, people can listen to this next year, and I will release it earlier on the 1st, so people then have that in mind that it's coming up and can work with it more intentionally as well.
And I think the other thing to bear in mind, so we've got this different lengths of time that harvesting can have. We've got different ways to harvest. You've got the idea of harvesting, but actually you're harvesting a part of a much bigger thing that you didn't even see. Maybe you haven't harvested because the idea is still growing legs. All of these are okay. The other thing I wanted to put into the space is the idea we talked around when we did be, or we did do, and maybe we did, now we're doing with have, is the subconscious belief patterns that may or may not be sitting in space. So we've just talked about the idea of keeping ourselves as positive as we can, which is fine, because, you know, really put the manifestation in. But also, it will provide an opportunity, this next X number of weeks will provide an opportunity where maybe we have a relationship to having that needs a bit of cleaning up, or needs a bit of reframing. It may not need cleaning, it may need reframing. For example, we have a belief that rich people are mean. Guess what? We're not going to want to be having, are we? Because once we have the yield of the thing, so whether that is literally a harvest of the grain, or whether that is harvest of an idea, therefore I get paid for it, however that shows up in the outside world. If we've got beliefs around having and not having, and also, you know, is there an ancestral thing maybe around like the lack of harvest? I mean, when were the harvests lean? I mean, my ancestors, for example, came from Ireland 5 generations ago. Well, if you look at the timing of that, that's around about the potato famine. So there is this, like, I'm not allowed to have, I can't have. Well, it's an opportunity to look with uncritical eyes at the fact that they may need some looking at. Use this time to change what having means, so that you can harvest, you can ground, you can land it.
And it's especially important for creatives, because there's this whole, I mean, I've talked about it at length in other episodes, this whole mentality about being a starving or suffering artist. So it's kind of built into our psyche as creatives that we're not allowed to have, we're not allowed to be joyful, blah, blah, blah. So this is a really good opportunity to look at those beliefs that you hold around your creativity. And it's, you know, just because you're compelled to create, are you holding beliefs that are holding you back, that's preventing you from actually reaping any rewards from what you do? The having, are you preventing yourself subconsciously? Of course, it's not always a conscious thing, but subconsciously sabotaging yourself against having in this harvest. It's perfect time to have a look at it.
And one of the things that what we will do in our subconscious, if that's the case, is as long as I don't have, I can always keep the creative ideas coming, I can always maintain that. So what you then do is that thing gets put on hold. So you do 9/10 of the thing and never get the last little bit over the line. And that shows up because it doesn't ground. It gets 99% of the way there and then just doesn't quite ground. So there's lots of different ways to look at this period as a creative.
Definitely, it's really enlightening. There's plenty that I've taken away from this for myself. I will definitely be going and having a second look at, I know I've cleared out a lot of stuff, but do I have anything else that's in the way of me having any ancestral stories, any personal stories? What is going on there, just to make sure it's really, really clean. And also that just giving myself a little bit of grace. Sometimes as creators, we are very, very hard on ourselves. So just actually, this is a rolling harvest, as we said, let it be so. Don't have to bring in the entire harvest today. It can start today and we can then let it continue. They're the things I'm really taking away from this.
And I want to make one final point, which I wasn't going to, but I feel it's important that I do. Somehow I can't.
Please do.
Stop this episode until I have. Manifestation, we've talked about it in lots of different ways, whether it's the Lionsgate Portal, whether it's the spleen that manifests because it separates the pure from the impure and then sends it off to have something done with it, whether it's, you know, the having, part of the creative process, however you want to frame it. What happens is the frequency, talking about when you were talking earlier about the starving artist concept that we'll have run with and had for so long, the frequency of manifesting something, the frequency of having something in the world and harvesting something, is the frequency of desire. What do we desire? So we've talked a lot in these different episodes about cleaning out subconscious limiting frameworks, because that's a really interesting coordinate and it's actually my wheelhouse, so fine. But actually, manifestation is built on desire. So you could look at it and start the other way, a bit like we're doing with the portal, which is, what do we want to manifest? What do we desire? And when we create a life built on desire, and what we want and what we desire and what we, what lights us up, what brings us back to that creative joy, however you want to frame it. If there are limiting beliefs contrary to that fact, they will show themselves. You don't need to go hunting into the wound or into the starving artist. By setting up, I want this, or I'm wanting to manifest this, or I desire this, it's contraindicated belief patterns will present themselves. So they can be cleaned up as they show up, as opposed to stay. So it allows you to move into desire, which is the frequency that manifests.
Instead of saying in that starving artist wounded space. Yes, absolutely. I like that. I think that's a really important message. So for anyone who is listening, take that away with you. Instead of, oh, what have I got that's in the way? Maybe let's think about, what do we want? Those things that are in the way are going to show up. So let's think about the joyful things, the positive things, the things we really want out of life. What are they? What do you want to create? What do you want to do? What do you want to have and be in the world? All of those fun, amazing things. And then just let those other bits that are in the way just show themselves, rather than let's go digging in the dirt for all the crappy things. Flip it that way around, and suddenly it's a lot more fun and a lot more doable, and definitely a lot more doable. So I think that's a really, really important piece. So thank you for sharing that as a last aside. That was really, really important.
It really was. And I look forward to joining you again in 6 weeks' time, when we will continue with the harvesting theme, because as I said, there are 3 kind of mini harvesting festivals within now and the end of October. But it will be a halfway point. So it's, what have we done in the first 6 weeks that have maybe come to fruition, or what have we put in place that means we will harvest something later? And what shift do we need to maybe make so that we can maximise the yield at the far end?
Well, I look forward to that. And so as a last aside, I will put these all in the show notes, but if anyone wants to find out more about what you do and work with you, how can they find you?
So I'm mostly findable, if that's even a word.
It is now.
It is now. I am mostly found on LinkedIn. I also have my website of emilytuck.com, and I've got my own podcast, Lilith Speaks, which is currently going through a guesting phase. So there's plenty of interesting conversations going on over there. Yeah, just get in touch and find out how we can work together on. So you'll make sure you've got all of my details.
Yes, I will put everything in the show notes. Thank you once again for a very enlightening conversation. I always love these. It's just because I understand the pagan wheel, it still gives me something new when we have these conversations. So I enjoy it as much as I hope my listeners do. Thank you for coming. Thank you everyone for listening. We will be back with Emily at the mid to end of September, and I will speak to you soon. Thanks for listening to Creative Power today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and consider leaving a review. To find out more ways you can connect or work with me, please visit www.camillafellisarnold.com/creative power.